you've had a meal of, let's say, a steak, right? You've had starches, carbs, you've had cookies, cakes, and so forth. It's about 7 hours in your stomach, especially if you go for a barbecue in the summer. So just think about how much you consume when you go for those barbecues, okay? So proteins are the main source of molecule that makes up in the body. The molecules themselves are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So the protein molecules intermix with water, which is the necessity of life, and the amount of water that you need on a daily basis is at least 3 liters.
3 liters?
3 liters, at least.
So that's like 12 glasses a day.
It's about 48 ounces. It's about 48 ounces of water. So we'll say we'll use the 8 glasses times 8, which is 64 ounces. Because 1 liter equals 16 ounces. If you don't drink enough water, then you have a problem with digestion. For instance, when the food goes from the stomach, the stomach environment is acidic. It has hydrochloric acid. When the food goes from the stomach into the small bowel, it becomes alkaline. So it's not only proteins, fats, carbohydrates, it's hormones, it's enzymes, and it's temperature. So the stomach temperature is acidic. When food goes into the small bowel, the temperature is alkaline. You need water in order to make that bicarb molecules. So if you're not drinking enough water, you're not making enough bicarb. Food tends to sit more in the stomach and backs up from the stomach into the esophagus, so people complain of reflux, burning, food molecules coming into the oral cavity when you're sleeping, and so forth. So everything has a consequence. It's like a domino effect. So if there's deficiency of proteins, then there's problems with growth and repair, there's ulcerations. You hear all the time of children having deficiencies of certain enzymes. Well, those are proteins. They don't grow properly, they can't walk properly, their teeth, their hair, their skin, their immune system is deficient, they get infections, and so forth and so forth. So proteins are the necessity of life. And then carbohydrates. Why do we need carbs? Because believe it or not, the main source of energy that we get for daily functions is from carbohydrates. It's about 40 to 60%. And the brain, the only and main source of energy to the brain is from the carbohydrates. So what is a carbohydrate? There's a simple carbohydrate, what is known as monosaccharide, mono for one, saccharide for the glucose, the sugar, or polysaccharide, polymedisaccharide glucose, which is more of a longer molecule. Just because it's longer does not mean that it's worse for you. For simple carbohydrates are fruits, but white rice, the white potato, the cookies, the cakes, the sugar. Okay?
That's simple?
Simple. Those are simple. And they're simple because the molecule, as we said, the simple is a monosaccharide. So it's either one molecule or the most it can be 2 molecules. And they're broken very quickly in the stomach. So their transit time is very, very quick. It goes from the mouth, esophagus, stomach, and into the small bowel very quickly. Versus the complex carbohydrates, does not mean they're bad, but it's the vegetables, it's the whole wheat, rice, the brown potato, oatmeal, regular cereal versus sugary cereal, which is the simple carbohydrate. So the smaller the molecule, the faster it goes. The quicker the energy, the more you bottom out. So what happens when you eat a cake or a cookie? The liver secretes enzymes that make the pancreas secrete insulin. So there's a big surge of insulin. When there's a surge of insulin, it allows for the sugar to bottom out. But as it goes up, it goes down very quickly. So people feel they have a lot of energy initially, and then they feel very dragged out, very tired, no energy. And the molecule, the nutrients that you get from it is not of greatest necessity to the body versus a complex carbohydrate, what you get from it is more of substantial energy for the body to use for what? For walking, sleeping, self-production, maintenance of our organs, maintenance of everything, again, structure and repair. Just because we're all sitting here, the body is constantly at work. So the carbohydrates are, why is the carbohydrate in the bad sense bad for us? Because what happens is when there's too much consumption of sugar, okay, excess sugar is stored as glycogen in the muscle and in the liver. So what happens when there's the most of production and storage of that chemical, then it turns, all the sugar turns into fat, and it goes into outside organs as adipose tissue, and therefore all the consequences that come from it. So fat. Why do we need fat? Well, there's two different types of fat. There's the essential fatty acids or lipids versus the non-essential. So the non-essential are steak, lard, pork. We don't really need it for substance of life. And it gives us the consequence of atherosclerosis, heart disease, strokes, etc. Versus the essential fatty acids or lipids, like the omega-3 that everybody reads about, right? Omega-3 or omega-6, which are really called linolenic acid. You get from seeds, from nuts, and from fish. Now, why is it important? Because without these fatty cells, the cells themselves, the outside membrane is essential for that production. So if for whatever reason you can't absorb fat, you're going to have problems with the membrane, the outside membrane of cells. So that's the most important reason, one of the most important reasons for fat or lipids. Then there are vitamins that are essential that are non-water soluble. So what are they? Vitamin A, vitamin D, E, and K. So if we have any deficiency in those vitamins because there's a problem with fat production or fat, not eating enough fish or eating nuts and so forth, then you have problems with your vision, you have problems with your skin, you have problems with memory, and increased problems with blood clots, which is the vitamin K. Then there are those vitamins and molecules and minerals that are water soluble, so you don't need the fat for, and like calcium and magnesium, iron, that are absorbed again through the small bowel, that are absorbed through what you take from the food into the liver and bloodstream and so forth. A very important vitamin is vitamin B12 that we get from our diet, but there's a factor called the intrinsic factor that is made in the stomach. Without this factor, we're unable to absorb vitamin D, and actually vitamin B12, excuse me. And vitamin B12 deficiency is the most common reason in America of dementia. And if you don't test for it, you're not going to find it in your usual blood work. So vitamin B12 deficiency gives you dementia. It starts as poor memory, and we all take it for granted. We all make excuses. It's our age, it's this, it's that. So it's true, it's very, very common. So you have poor memory. It also affects our walking, our sense. When you go down those stairs, okay, it's not only the nerves that help us, but it's also vitamin B12 and the lower part of your brain, which is the cerebellum. So if you're B12 deficient, most people going down the stairs don't have that stability, so their gait is very intact, it's very unstable. So you have to have that intrinsic factor from the stomach, which in the small bowel becomes this complex which allows for the absorption. Also, if you don't have vitamin B12, you have a type of anemia called pernicious anemia, and it cannot be replaced with iron. It has to be replaced with B12. So that's a very important vitamin that we get from our diet.